Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Morpay's Fundamentals webinar this morning on managing flexible working requests in 2025. I'm Hannah Booth, the Content and Communications Manager here at Morpay. We've got lots to cover this morning, so we'll get started by running you through some housekeeping and also the agenda for today's session. So Carl will start off by giving an overview of flexible working before discussing the pros and cons. He'll also look at managing requests and reasons for refusal before assessing guidance on implementing flexible working practices. And finally, Carl will also examine how the government is proposing to strengthen legislation. And of course, as usual, we'll then move into our Q&A session where you can ask Carl any questions that you may have on flexible working. So in terms of how to ask a question, you may have noticed that your microphone is on mute, but we do want to hear from you. So please drop your questions into the question panel as shown here. We've had over 1,000 people register for the webinar this morning. It's proved really popular, so we will do our best to get through as many questions as possible. Like I say, drop them in as you think of them throughout the session and we will run through them at the end. And also, if you face any technical difficulties, don't worry, and don't worry about making notes, because we will be sending out a recording of the webinar and also a copy of the slides later on today. You'll get those via email. Now, I'm aware that there will be some people on the webinar this morning that aren't familiar with Morpay, so I will give you a quick overview. So we've been around since 1966 and have all the accreditations you'd expect. And our promise is to make payroll and HR easy. And here's how we do it. We've built payroll and HR software that's easy to use. We deliver quality outsourcing options, and all of this means worry-free compliance for businesses. On the slide, you can see some of the businesses that trust us to take care of their payroll and HR. And we're also award-winning. On this slide, you can see some of the industry awards and shortlists we've picked up over the last couple of years. And if you would like to find out more about us and our software and services, then drop me a message in the Q&A panel and I will arrange for one of my colleagues to give you a call. So that's enough about us. Let's meet today's presenter. If you've joined our webinars before, then you will, of course, be familiar with Carl. Carl is both legally and HR qualified. He has over 20 years experience, and he's one of our lovely employment law and HR experts here at Morpay. We're lucky to have had Carl at Morpay for over 12 years, and he's received more 5-star Trustpilot reviews than you can shake a stick at. It's safe to say our customers love him for all his professional advice and his polite and friendly manner. So I will now pass you over to Carl to run through today's webinar on flexible working. Thank you, Carl.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I think, is it autumn yet? I think it is. So our first autumnal webinar. First of all, I'd like today to be a two-way process. As my colleague Hannah said, yes, of course, we've got loads of slides coming up, but second of all, what we'd like is a really good Q&A session at the end, because that, I think, really adds value. Again, to go over Hannah's words, yeah, don't worry about taking notes. All these slide deck, and we're a little bit word heavy today on the slide deck. There's a reason for that, and that reason is we're getting bogged down in heavier and heavier legislation. More about that later. And the other reason is you've better things to do on a Thursday morning, is just kind of take notes. Okay, if we can move on to the next slide, please, Hannah. Okay, flexible working. We've come a long way. I'm not here this morning to give you a history lesson, but back in the day, and I know I'm showing my age now, I'll change that to experience. Age. Back in the day, you could make a flexible working request if you had a child under 5. That's how it used to be, and that's how the government brought it in. But needless to say, over the years and years and years, things have changed. Okay, right, where we are now, and again, I promise you, not a history lesson. Right now, and if you look, and I'm not going to read out these slides, they're there for reference in the future, but to give you a brief overview, where we are now is an employee can request flexible working from day one. So you can employ a brand new recruit on day one. They'll say, well, actually, I don't want to work on a Thursday. We do see it happen here at Morpay, well, not just Thursdays, other days as well, but you get the point. And you have got a legal obligation to have a look at that. And more about that later, and we'll come on to that, what you've got to do, but you have to take it seriously from the get-go. Where we used to be is you could make one request, or an employee could make one request every 12 months. It's now 2. Okay. But again, oh God, I'm boring myself now. The history used to be every 3 months, and now it's 2 months. So you've got to reach a decision within 2 months. Okay, and this is legally binding, by the way. So as a business, if you've got 1,000 employees or 1 employee, it's the same. It doesn't matter. Right now, an employee has got to make a flexible working request. How it's typically done, and it doesn't have to be, is it's in writing. You've got to consider it, and you've got to give a certain procedure to get to an output, but more about that later. And that is a legal obligation, and you've got to clearly document it. Your employees may go home at night and say, I have spoken to HR, they have said this, they have said that, but if you don't document it in a tribunal in 12 months' time, it's your word against their evidence. Okay. Okay, can we move on, please, to the next slide? Okay, thank you for that. Common forms of flexible working is part-time hours. That's fairly obvious. I'm working 5 days a week. I want to work 3 days a week. Adjusted start and finish times. I mean, these are common. They're not every. Compressed hours. I want to work 4 days a week at 10 hours rather than 5 days a week at 8 hours. Flexi time. Hybrid and remote working, and that has become a big thing. I think it's on the back of COVID, where not we all, but quite a few people got used to working from home. We were all brought back into the office, and there's been a little bit of resentment. So a lot of flexible working requests have been, can I work 2-3 days from home, and also job sharing. Okay, again, these slides are available, so don't worry. I appreciate I'm going a little bit of breakneck speed. The reason for that is we've got a lot to get through, and I'm keen to get to the final bit, which is what's coming down the path. Flexible working, I mentioned previously, was something that was very rare. Flexible working now is something that's quite common, but in future, with the government's new legislation, which is a big amount of legislation all coming over 18 months, it'll get more and more relevant. So I'd like to have a look at the future, as well as kind of signposting where we are at the moment. Okay, so let's look at the pros and cons of flexible working. Okay, Hannah, if we could just move it on one. Okay, it can be a win-win situation. It can be a lose-lose situation. I'm not going to work through these slides reading them, because I'm working on the principle you can all read, and they are available, as I've said. For businesses, flexible working is good for access to the wider talent pool. Would you rather have somebody that's excellent as a candidate that can work 4 days a week, or somebody that's average that can work 5 days a week? Okay. It's also from an ethical point of view, and more businesses, which is great to see, are being more community centric. So you support carers, disabled people, older workers, people with special interests going on in their life that normally would be declined from applying because they can't do 9 to 5, weekend cover, etc., etc. Okay, for employees, flexible working reduces stress. We've all sat on the motorway being very annoyed at sat in a queue. So maybe if you work from home, you go into the kitchen, you get your breakfast, you go into the home office, and hey presto, you're off, rather than sat in a queue for 45 minutes, an hour and a half. Okay, it increases motivation, and these are not just kind of things on slides, these are proven facts. If you are an employer that says to your staff, actually, we want the work done, but it can be more on your terms, you'll get staff that are more motivated, that will be attracted to your business, that will retain in your business and be motivated in your business. Okay, again, we're going rather quickly today, aren't we? So if we could move on, I want to look at the downsides, and they are downsides. For businesses, managing output at a distance can be difficult. Yes, absolutely. Now, there's a lot of clever software that looks at keystrokes, that looks at output, that looks at deadlines met and lost. It can be difficult. Managers, there's quite a few clients of mine say that, you know, while the cat's away, the mice will play. So it can be, if you've got everybody in the office, what you can have is clear accountability and clear visibility from your managers. If they are at home, the downside is, are they working? Are they doing the dishwasher? Are they making beds? Okay. And that's something you can never really get your handle on, because if somebody says, I was just reviewing a document, then you can never prove that actually they were putting the pots and pans back in the cupboard. Okay, the second one is the company culture. Okay, it's great to be in the office. You can bounce ideas about, you can chat about last night's football, you can say, I've got this problem at work, what do you think about it? When you've got people remote, it gets more and more difficult. Don't get me wrong, we live in a world of Teams, Zoom, etc., etc. But sometimes it's best just to have a chat with somebody by the vending machine, or just wandering over to your desk. The third one is an important one. Not every role is suitable for flexible working. Okay, and that is open to debate. There's clear black and white things. If you are a care worker, there's no way you can work from home and look after your vulnerable service users. But we get into a world of grey from black and white. Can they work from home? Can't they work from home? Can we look at a hybrid? It's all up for grabs, and it comes to a legal risk, because the danger is you're in tribunal. Your argument is there's no way they can work from home, and they claim they can work from home, and it's up to a judge on the day, and that's where you don't want to be. But more about that later. Proximity bias and equal access. I'm not going to go into any depth in that. It's fairly obvious. It's what it says. It can create an unfairness and resent kind of inequality. You've given Joe Blogs from the next department this, I've not got this. Rather than nip it in the bud of having a quick discussion, somebody sits at home and sees. Right, for employees, the cons of flexible working. Working from home can blur boundaries. What we can get is, yes, risk of burnout, because some employees are never off limits. What they'll choose to do is log off at 3, log back on at 7 p.m, work until midnight. Work should be measured and metered, and it shouldn't be, well, you work when you can and you do home life when you can. Likewise, and there's no nice way to say, it can lead to isolation. So we mentioned on the slide here that it's fewer career opportunities. What we've got to look at is mental health issues. If you agree that you can allow somebody to work from home, are they going to get isolated? I mentioned previously, it's good just to chat about something and nothing at work. If they're sat there on their own day after day, is it really good for their mental health? And I'm now going to mention something that's not on my slide, is domestic abuse. If somebody is working from home they have no respite from a problem at home. I'm trying to skirt around the problem here. If they're in their office, they've got a safe space. If they're at home, they are isolated. I'll leave it at that. Okay. And likewise for employees, uneven access to flexibility or refuse request can cause team tensions. No way about that. This guy got flexible working. I didn't get flexible working, and therefore it's unfair. So they're the main cons. There are others, but for today, those are the main ones. Okay, if we can move on, please, to managing requests and the reasons for refusal. Okay, let's move on to the next slide, to an overview to managing requests. Again, I'm not going to read through these slides, but since April of last year, and in employment law terms, that's quite rapid. Where are we now, 18 months later? But the law changed. What used to happen is staff used to request it. You had several months to look at it. You didn't have to give detailed reasons why you refused it. But what we've now got to do, and what's coming down the path, is take these requests very seriously. One of the words that you'll pick up from these slides is that you've got to make accurate recordings. I think it's mentioned 2 or 3 times in the slide deck. It's got to be documented. There's got to be a procedure. It will be in your handbook, and you've got to follow it. Not because it's good practice, and it is good practice, but moreover, you've a legal obligation to do that. So you've got to consider advantages and have a hard look at it before you refuse. I'll come on to it in a bit, but we hear often on the advice line that runs 24/7, 365, that we want to refuse it because the MD's not keen. If we give it to one person, they'll all want it, or we don't really trust this person. These are not good reasons to refuse. You have 8 legal reasons, and we will come on to those 8 legal reasons and what they are. But when an employee requests it, you have a clear obligation to consider the advantages, consult with the employee before any refusal, confirm the decision in writing. So again, we're creating the paper trail, and we've got to follow the ACAS code of practice. The ACAS code of practice is not best practice, it's legislation, it's law, and you could end up in costly tribunal terms. And we're seeing more and more of that as the legislation gets tighter and tighter. Okay, if we can move on to the next slide, please, Hannah. I mentioned about them being 8 reasons we can refuse a request, and there they are. Okay. You'll see on there, management not keen is not there. Give it to one, give it to all is not there, etc., etc. Those are the 8 reasons you can turn it down, and there are no other. So I'll just dwell on that for 5-10 seconds to let you have a look at it. I'm not going to read it. But if you refuse flexible working, it's got to be 8 reasons, and there they are. And before we move on, the bottom right-hand green square there does say vague explanations leave employers vulnerable to legal challenge, and that is a main takeaway from that slide. If it's not one of those 8, then you may have problems. There's another one about something about the Secretary of State can get involved, but that's really left field. You've got to have a look at those. And currently, and again, we're going to come on to the future, currently, those are the reasons you can refuse, no other. Okay, Hannah, thank you. If we can move on. Legal risks. I always find that when I talk about case law, well, maybe it's just in my mind, but when I talk about case law, you can hear people thinking now's the time to put the kettle on, because it's vague and it's awful and it's boring. And you're perfectly correct, it is. But also, it's really important, because what happens, you'll go to court, hopefully you won't, but if you go to court, the judge will actually look at case law and base your decision on decisions that have gone before you in appeal courts. I'm not going to go through this because I said it'll bore you to death, but the case of Glover and Lacoste UK Limited, I'm not going to read through that. I did promise you that I'll keep it light. Basically, Glover popped in a flexible working request and it was initially refused. What happened? There was an appeal and there was lots of kind of communications. In the end, they agreed and gave Glover her flexible working requirements. She still went to court and won, because you can't overturn bad practice. So it's important, you as HR managers, as you as SME business owners, that you train in good practice when it comes to dealing with flexible working, because what happens if you don't get it right initially, even if you agree with your employer at the appeal stage, it can still turn quite nasty very quickly. But again, if your clients of ours, just give us a ring. I've had a flexible working request. They want to work a 3-day week, or they want to work from home, or they want to do whatever. Just give us a call. A general rule of thumb, the sooner we can get involved, the higher the chance of success that if you're ever challenged. But anyway, enough about case law. I appreciate that your eyes have glazed over, so let's move on. That stuff is for the nerds like me. Okay. Requests from employees returning from mat leave. This is a big one. Okay, this is possibly the most common reason for flexible working. Possibly. I don't know. I don't have the stats present. Again, if you look at that top bullet point, 8 business grounds. Okay. We're going to wander slowly into a minefield. Right now, people on mat leave, female, typically female, it's a modern world, I appreciate that. So all of a sudden you've got discrimination if you refuse. I'm now going to go a little bit off piste, and this is where Hannah gets nervous. What we do get is a lot of requests on the advice line to say, my employee has had 12 months mat leave. She's requested flexible working to work from home. And we're concerned that it's basically she's going to be childcare for the baby, and when baby's asleep, then she'll be doing some work. So at this point, we've got a real yin and yang about what we do as an organisation. Yes, we're family centric. Yes, we're supportive. Yes, we want to do the right thing. But B, we also need to get the work done. So what happens if you've got a 40-hour week contract working from home? How much of that work is going to get done? Okay. If I can just briefly turn to good practice tips when managing requests, there at the top right hand side of the slide. I'm going to say good morning to one of my clients, good morning, because she asked me this question a couple of weeks ago. I'm not going to mention her, GDPR, but good morning, welcome to have you aboard. And the question she asked, and it was an excellent question, is we give it to one person and they're all going to want it. So multiple requests arrive at once, and you've got to assess each one on its own merits. Just because you give one employee the request and granted that request doesn't mean to say everybody else can stack up behind to say, well, you let him off on Thursday afternoon, why not me? And the short answer is we'll base it on its own merits. It's a case-by-case basis. It's not of open floodgates. We're going to come on to some equality stuff shortly, and it is important, but it's a case-by-case basis. Okay, Hannah, if we could just click that on, please, and we'll look at guidance on implementing flexible working practices. Now, it's key and also legal that you have a policy in practice to make flexible working accessible to all. So if we move it on to the next slide, please. That's the one. Okay. This year, more than 80% of employees says flexibility was key to their job satisfaction. 80%. And I'm going to come back to a slide we talked about 20 minutes ago, 15 minutes ago, that if you want to attract, retain, and motivate your best employees, you've got to seriously think about flexible working. It's a day one right, so from the get-go. If you've got 80% of employees say flexibility is important, and you've got a SLT team saying we're not going to do it, then as HR professionals, you've got an argument on your hand that do we risk losing talent? Do we risk not engaging with new talent? It's very important that we have a policy, and it's in the headline there, it's no longer a nice to have. It's a case of a bedrock of what you should be looking at. And again, that second bullet point, we might come back to the COVID argument, but 28% of UK workers are hybrid right now. There's certain workers that will never be hybrid, care industry, teachers, people like that, but people with office jobs, people with roles that are not client facing all of the time, or even remote client facing, 28% of them are now currently hybrid. I think as HR professionals, what you should be doing is engaging with your staff and saying, okay, you're working from home 2 days a week, or you've got compressed hours or whatever. You've been doing it now for 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks. How do you feel about that? Get some feedback and you can work out, are your policies working? Because there's nothing worse than having a policy and everybody hating it. And as HR professionals, policies should be in place and should be for the good of the business and the good of the people. And if they're not working, you might want to look at addressing it. So the flexible working policy is not a nice to have. What it is a chance for you to increase candidates, increase retention, maintain talent or increase talent. It's no longer an option. Okay, let's quickly move on. Okay, on the previous slide, create a clear policy. The word policy in HR is banded around many times, but the scope of it, the process, the expectations, they're key to create a clear policy. What is your policy? We've talked about the ACAS guidelines being binding and legal, and they are. But what you need to do is have your own policy. The ACAS is all-encompassing, and that may be not right for your business. You've got to adhere to it, but what you've got to do is to say, as an organisation, what do we want? What do we need? What are our expectations? And a clear policy, the scope of that policy, the process and expectations should be all laid down in your handbook. If you're a client of ours, and hopefully you are, and if not, please become a client of ours because we're really nice people. And if you're not and never want to become a client of ours, it's key that the HR paperwork is in order and is fit for purpose. You need a policy. Okay. Number 2, I'm not going to really kind of hone on that. Document agreements. I said it before and I'll say it again, it's clear that you get the documentation in place. An employee may be making notes when they go home from a meeting with you. You're not making notes, so we're in tribunal and all of a sudden an employee has got the upper hand. The third one, and I think this is the key one from this slide, support line managers. I had a horrific case recently where line managers are not trained. Clearly, I'm not going to mention any great detail about it, but there was a flexible working request from a 22-year-old that wanted time off to train for semi-pro rugby. And his line manager said, you're 22, you're as fit as a fiddle, There's that old boy over there that's 6 months off retirement, and you're looking for less hours. He should be asking for it, and you're not. I'll come on to discrimination, but if your line managers don't understand the implications of their words, then you need to support them, you need to have HR in that meeting, you need to have resources and training, because the worst comes to the worst, and we'll talk about discrimination shortly. It goes bad very quickly. And again, number 4, I'm coming back to the mantra that I said fairly early on, communicate your changes well. Documentation, updates, one-to-ones, and again, keep it personal. I know we live in a world of emails and WhatsApp where you can just fire a message off to anybody, but there's something you need to be doing as business owners, as HR professionals, where let's just talk to each other. It's really impersonal. Emails can be taken 2 ways. You can read an email and think that's really aggressive. You can read an email and think that's supportive. Just talk to each other and document it. There, I mentioned the word documentation yet again. Measure performance fairly, okay, and listen and review, adapt. It's a good job. These slides will be available to you because, again, they're quite worthy. I've one eye on the clock, and I don't want to get beaten up by Hannah for running over the clock. Maybe getting beaten up, that's gross misconduct. Maybe that's a different webinar for a different day. Huge things are coming down the track, okay? Not political, the MOPE is not political, but there's huge once in a generation legislation coming down the path when it comes to employment law. Absolutely huge. We're all going to have to, well, relearn the majority of it, okay? The Employment Rights Bill is going to look at many things, and it's going to tear up what's gone before it. But one of the things when it comes to flexible working, it's now going to look at reasonableness. Now you're going to say, well, what's reasonable? And you know, that's throwing fog into the air. Who knows what's reasonable? But we need to have a look at that. I had a communication this morning to say we think it's going to be April 27 when it comes in, the new legislation for flexible working. Can I emphasize the word think? Because right now the laws have not been created. Needless to say, they've not been challenged in court. Needless to say, it'll be a few years before they're challenged in appeal court, but this is what we think. Again, Hannah, sorry, I'm going to go slightly off piste here. This legislation, the Employment Rights Bill, is going to revolutionise employment law. Here at MOPE, these webinars are free. Yes, you're talking to a Yorkshireman. So please keep listening to these, because as the dark becomes light with this legislation, we'll keep you up to speed. And right now, people may know that unfair dismissal has 2 years. You've got to have 2 years service for unfair dismissal. That's shortly going to change, quote unquote, to a day 1 right. Not sure how that's going to work. There's, I won't say the word rumours, but there's good information that it's going to be 6 months. But again, as things evolve and it touches on many facets of employment law, please come back to the webinars. They're a really useful point where you can keep ahead of the game and not be the person in tribunal. Okay, off piste, back on piste. Hannah, if we could just move over a slide, please. The Employment Rights Bill, it's going to come in stages between 25 and 27. We're starting to hear the first rumblings, but the takeaway from this slide, and if you look at the top left there, we've mentioned about the 8 reasons why you can refuse. That's the lawful bit, but it also now has to be reasonable. Okay, I'll say it again. What does the word reasonable mean? Well, a lot of lawyers have got rich off the word reasonable. What's reasonable to you is not reasonable to somebody else. So this is what you need to do and protect your business, because what's coming down the path may have some significant impact on your business. Again, I'm not going to review it. Time doesn't allow it, but it's on the slides that will be sent out to you. Okay, if we can just please move on. Okay, what can you do for these problems that are coming down the path? Well, first of all, you need to review past decisions. Okay, are they reasonable? Just because they're legal, that's one test that currently you'll be looked at, but there's another test that is coming in, might be legal, but is it reasonable? Just because somebody wants to play golf on a Friday afternoon, well, that's none of our business. What is reasonable is the impact it has on our business. We can say it's got a detrimental impact on quality, or we can't distribute the work, which are 2 of the 8 reasons. But is that reasonable? Can we justify it? So what you need to be doing is having a look of, can we back up our decision? Why? Is it reasonable? The second bullet point is policies and procedures. Can we get them ready for when the law comes in? We need to keep an eye on that. At MorePay, you get your policies and procedures and handbooks updated once a year. But even so, again, call us on the advice line. We can give you the up-to-date information, and we need to be ahead of, or you need to be ahead of the game using us. Okay, on the middle section, on the second bullet point, I'm going to come to that, and I know I've kind of overdone it this morning. Clearly documented. Okay, if it's not written down, it never happened. And again, the final point there on the middle section, you need to train your managers. If you've got some rogue warehouse manager that's the king of their own kingdom, and they say something, it'll drop your organization in it. There's no 2 ways about it. So again, your defence in tribunal is, we trained the warehouse manager, he had a heavy session with HR was present, and that's our defence in tribunal. If you have a warehouse manager go rogue on you, then the liability flips to you, unless you can demonstrate that you've something in place to make sure that flexible working requests are dealt with on all occasions in a fair, legal, and soon to be reasonable way. Okay. We are expecting, well, first of all, we have seen a rise in tribunal cases on flexible working, and that is no doubt going to increase. Right now, tribunals are free to access for employees. Right now, an employee can go online and just say, I'm not happy, and the judge has to sort it out. So the stronger your defence, and I've not come here today to kind of just spook you, that's not my intention. What I am saying is tribunal cases are rising, and they will further rise in future when we get the reasonable test. So an employer right now can say, I couldn't distribute the work because there's no staff available on a Thursday. And that's fine. Judge will say, thank you for coming and goodbye. In future is, well, is that reasonable? Could you tell your clients that they're available Wednesday and Fridays? Could you? So again, consider that. You're going to need to back up your decision. Okay, I'll leave that alone, and if we could just move on to the Q&A session. So before we get there, the main takeaways of, we've come a long way on flexible working. Right now, flexible working should be in writing. Doesn't have to be, but it should be in writing. You have to consider it within a timescale, 2 months. An employee can make 2 flexible working requests within 12 months. You have to document the outcome. If you reject, it's got to be on one of the 8 reasons. Sometimes you can fudge it a little bit to say, well, we're not happy with this, but we're happy with that. But again, phone the advice line, we can help with that. But if you reject it, it's got to be on solid business grounds and not the MD doesn't like it. And the big takeaway is what's coming down the path is going to be epic, both on flexible working, but the entire employment law kind of scale of everything. So, okay, so thank you for that. I think at 40 minutes I've come in on time. Again, these slides are available for you to peruse and use as a resource. Before I hand you back to Hannah, what I will say is these slides are current now, but I think, as I've mentioned on several occasions, in future, these will quickly become obsolete. So please come back to us, to the advice line. Please come back to us to the webinar, and we'll keep you updated and keep you safe. So with that, thank you, and back to Hannah. Thank you.
Thanks, Carl. That was a really informative session. And as you can imagine, we have had lots of questions. So we will dive straight into the questions. If you do have any more questions, keep dropping them into the Q&A panel. So first question, can you ask a candidate at interview stage if they plan on submitting a flexible working request?
In a word, it's unwise. Unwise, is that one word too? It's one word. The reason for that is the danger is I want to make a flexible working request due to my disability, or due to my religious belief, or something like that. So if you don't employ them, the case is in tribunal. I mentioned that I needed Fridays off for prayer, and my application was rejected. So therefore, that's religious discrimination. So I think the answer is don't ask it. And if on day one they do ask it, the employee or your new employee asks it, we'll deal with it. I would imagine the answer will be no, because we've got deliveries going out on Friday and we employed you to send the deliveries. But don't ask it, employ them, and we'll deal with it.
Thanks, Carl. So next question is, if you refuse a flexible working request due to the impact it would have on customers and your inability to reorganise work amongst existing staff, but you have previously approved a flexible working request within the same team, can you refuse it, or does that put you in a tricky position?
Not really. I mean, again, the devil's in the detail. You can refuse it. You can say we allowed this person to have flexible working, but because now we're up to the limits on getting work out, and we can't rearrange work, and we can't get additional staff to support it, and there's an additional cost if we got some temps in, you can refuse it. So they say you allowed it for them, but you're not allowed it for me. And if there's no kind of protected characteristics, race, age, sex, etc., then yeah, you can deny it, and they'll say that's unfair, and you'll say, well, have a chat with your MP. It's the law.
Thanks, Carl. So next question, as we are beginning to move back into the office 2 days a week, we've seen an increase in flexible working requests to work from home permanently. Should we consider these requests, and to what degree? We've honoured colleagues who have physical mobility issues, but what about colleagues who advise that office working and commuting is detrimental to their mental health?
They need to evidence that position. We all get upset trying to get into the office in train delays and kind of roadworks and things like that. Just saying, I want to work from home for mental health issues. The next question is, well, when did you see your GP? What's the diagnosis? What's the prognosis? What's the medication? Just saying, I want to work from home for mental health issues. As businesses, we've got to support that. We've got to understand that, but we can't just take it on face value.
Thanks, Carl. Next question. We have agreed a change in working hours, a flexible working request. Now, 18 months later, the business needs have changed. Can we go back and ask to amend the flexible working request?
In a word, yes. What you can do is go back to your employee. I mean, with flexible working, you can, if it's mutually agreed, trial it. And I'm working on the principle on this question, they've not trialed it. But 18 months later, if the needs of the business has changed, you can go back to them to say, look, X, Y, and Z, this is why we need to change. Get into consultation. Can you force it? It depends on facts. And again, if you're a client of ours, please call me or one of my colleagues. But you can certainly open that up to say, look, it's not working. We need to do things differently.
Thanks, Carl. So next question is one around maternity. So when reviewing a request from a maternity returner to be full-time working from home, how do you address the concern that the reason for this request is childcare? What can you ask them and what can't you ask them about the arrangements that they've got in place?
Yeah, you're fairly free just to ask them, okay, to say okay, you put a request into work from home on the back of mat leave. What childcare have you got in place? And the answer will be none. And you think, well, how realistically babies need a lot of care, they're high maintenance. How's that going to work? Alternatively, if they say, I've got my partner's mother coming round 9:05 and they're in charge, and all their childcare, nappy changing, breast milk, etc., is all taken care of, then the answer is yes. But it all depends on what comfort you've got as a manager versus what comfort an employee's got as an individual that can do home working and still work for you. The contracted hours or the hours that gets the work done, their postcode should not change their output. So if they're at home after mat leave, or if they work after mat leave, the work is the work.
Thanks, Carl. That's useful. Another one relating to maternity leave. So if someone returning from maternity leave submits a request for flexible working 5 months before they're due to return, are we able to tell them that it's too soon to apply and that we can't consider any requests until 1 to 2 months before they wish to return?
Yeah, I think that's wise. The danger is you say to your employee, if we look at that flexible working now, the answer may be, and again, we're coming back to the 8 reasons that I've over-egged, so I won't go back there again. If the answer's no now, it's another 6 months, because you've got 2 a year, before you can make another one. So why don't you withdraw that request and make it nearer the time? Because with due respect to any business, where you're going to be in 5 months' time, people leave, people come, systems change, customers come and go. It's now too early. We don't know where we're going to be in 5 months' time. Why don't you withdraw that? We'll use one of your kit days, keep in touch days, at the end of the maternity, and we'll have a look at it with 4 weeks to go, but 5 months is too early. But if they want that request, we'll hear it, but the outcome may be not to their liking, and they may have another 6 months before they can make another request.
Thank you, Carl. So moving on to the next question. Our company is fully remote. We normally allow flexible working requests, but our policy is not to allow compressed hours. We allow it occasionally on a temporary basis. If someone requests compressed hours, should we now allow it, assuming the 8 reasons to decline don't apply?
Yes, if the 8 reasons are not there, you should allow it. But I mean, the advice line is a good example. I'm not trying to kind of sell here, but we operate 24/7, 365. So if we said to our boss, we don't want to work Fridays, we want compressed hours Monday to Thursday, the answer is, well, there is no advice line kind of Friday, so therefore it's rejected, detrimental impact on quality. But if you can allow it, if somebody has compressed hours, they're not customer facing, and they can get the work done, and there's none of the 8 reasons, and you follow fair procedure, then I suggest you grant it.
Thank you, Carl. That's useful. So next question. I have a member of staff working from home 2 days a week, which is the company policy. They, however, feel isolated on the days that they're working from home. So I have verbally mentioned to them that they could go into the office on their working from home days, but this seems to be resented within the workplace. So what would your advice be? Is there a problem legally with them coming in when actually they're contracted to work from home 2 days?
The answer to the staff in the office is tough. Obviously, I need to know a little bit more, but anecdotally, it's tough. If they're not happy with somebody coming in, why not? Is there a desk that they don't have? Is there a problem? But if somebody wants to come into the office and other staff don't like it, then the answer's tough. The management are in charge, not the staff. Unless there's a valid reason for that, But just saying, well, it's in our policy for 2 days a week working from home. Well, okay, they've decided they will work from the office. They could have worked from Cafe Nero, they could have worked from the mother-in-laws, but they've decided to come into the office. What's the problem?
Okay, so next question, we'll probably get to the last 1 or 2 questions now before we wrap up, but thanks to everyone that has asked a question, because I think this has been really valuable to everyone. So can we approve a request on the grounds of parental responsibilities, even if within the same team we've previously rejected a request for another reason, such as attending a yoga class?
Again, we're going to come back to a case-by-case basis. I appreciate that's not what you wanted to hear, but thanks anyway. Yes, you can reject it. You can reject that request, and somebody will say, well, you let them have it for yoga and I need it to look after my child or whatever their responsibilities are. But it'll be based on business reasons currently, rather than, well, you gave it to them, you're not giving it to me, and my reason is more important. What you'll do is point out, well, there's nobody else here to do your job, or if we hire somebody in, it's going to cost agency fees, so you can reject it. If you are a client of ours, just give us a call and we'll get into the granular detail, but that's kind of a brief, broad brush oversight.
Well, thanks, Carl. So we will go for the last question now. So last question, we've received a flexible working request just before starting a consultation to change team shifts. How should we deal with the 2 processes that are conflicting?
Okay, what you can do is say to your employee, thanks for your flexible working request. We've 2 months to deal with it, but before we get to the end of the 2 months, we're going to have a look at a restructure. So you can do one of 2 things. You can wait 2 months, you can withdraw it, and then let's have a look at the restructure and then resubmit it at the end of the restructure to see if your thoughts have changed. But it depends how quickly the restructure is going to happen. But if it's imminent, and certainly in the next 6-8 weeks, then you can say, look, we're having a restructure. Your flexible working is premature. Either withdraw it or we'll hear it now. But the danger is we have the restructure and then you've lost that opportunity to have a flexible working request. That's a bit nerdy, but you know, hey ho. Hannah, you did ask me to come on this.
Brilliant. Thank you, Carl. I think that, like I say, that Q&A session has been fantastic. So before we close the session off for today, I will point you in the direction of our Knowledge Centre. You can find it in the main menu on our website. And within here, you'll find the blogs that are written by some of Carl's colleagues and our consultants. You'll find guides, there's guides to flexible working, there's webinars on there, upcoming webinars. We've got one next month that's looking specifically at hybrid working and the return to the office. And everything in there is free to download. So do go and have a look. There's lots of really great resources in there for you. And a little bit of information about our HR support. So as Carl has mentioned, our HR advice line runs 24/7, 365 days a year. So no matter when an HR issue crops up, best practice employment law advice is always available over the phone, anytime, and delivered by our highly experienced team of qualified experts. So if you would like to find out more about our HR and employment law services, please drop a message in the Q&A panel and I will ask one of my colleagues to contact you. And finally, I have also included a guide to total HR management. You can click on the link to read the guide. We believe that when combined with expert HR support, HR software transforms workforce management, allowing businesses to stay compliant, reduce costs, and enhance overall productivity. Total HR management is a solution that brings both elements together, helping businesses tackle challenges and achieve sustainable growth. So like I said, you can simply click on the Read Now button to find out more. So that is everything from us this morning. Thank you to everyone that's joined the webinar, and thank you to everybody that also asked a question. Thank you very much to Carl. It's been a very informative session. I'm sure you'll agree. We will be following up this afternoon with the slides and the recording. So I hope you found it useful and I hope you have a lovely day, and we will now close off this morning's webinar. Thank you, everyone.